Welcome to Just Minding My Business Media. I'm happy that you're here today. And boy, are you in for a treat. Today, I am happy to bring to you John Chan, who is an entrepreneur with a passion for user experience design and a wide range of interests that make him a true polymath. At the young age of 19, John dropped out of the university he was attending to start his own web design consultancy, which led him to work for companies like UBC and Basecamp before fully transitioning into entrepreneurship. Throughout his career, John has started three businesses, each showcasing his diverse skill set and experience. His latest venture, Two-Time Growth Agency, is a digital marketing agency that specializes in helping e-commerce and DTC brands grow and scale with paid ads and ad creative development. Wow, you've been so busy at a young age.
There's a lot going on. Yeah, just a little bit of ADHD mixed in. So, Ida, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Wow. So, begin this. Let's talk about a little bit about your background before you arrived here.
Sure. I mean, I think it all started in high school because realistically, I grew up. So I went to high school in 2000, and at the time, we were very lucky that our high school teachers taught us how to make websites and do development and what have you. And so, growing up, I've always wanted to be an animator, and I was really good at art and design, but I didn't really quite figure out what the career direction I wanted. I thought I wanted to be an animator. And so luck had it that when I went to university in 2006, I studied the fine arts program, but I was a bit disenchanted. So I wasn't really good at school. I was good at school, but I wasn't really interested in it. And so I think I just kept looking at different side projects, what happened, and one thing led to another, and I started freelancing, and all kind of just started from there.
Yeah. So that's what my son does, animation.
Nice.
That's what he loves. He loves to draw and sketch and do all this good stuff, and he likes animation. Wow, it's funny. Art is comes in so many flavors.
Oh, for sure. And it's one of those things where it really led to a lot of those skills that we develop now, but it's all coming back, but it all started there, yes.
Yes, yes. So how was your experience running a business as an immigrant family?
I mean, in the beginning, I never thought about it really in that way. I mean, in Canada, we have a lot of different migrants from a lot of different backgrounds, and so it didn't really dawn upon me the significance of it. But I think over time, as I understood uh, where I come from, or how I interact with other people, a lot of it really boiled down to having just a sense that my parents gave up a lot for us to be here, and it's in the beginning a lot of us running businesses was run trying to make a quick buck, what have you, and trying to figure out how to you know make ends meet, and what have you. But over time, the longer and more mature I got, the more I realized that it really was the fact that my parents gave up a lot for us to be here and grow up here and have a great education, that allowed us to grow up with the internet and give us the different opportunities that we have. And so nowadays, the way that resonate with being an immigrant really is that how could I not take full advantage of the fact that we live in such a wonderful country with all these wonderful opportunities, and not utilizing it felt like it was a waste. But it didn't start off that way, but it doesn't definitely does feel like that now.
Yes. And where are you from, John?
I'm from Hong Kong, so pardon me. I'm from Hong Kong. I was born and I moved to Vancouver when I was 6, so I basically grew up here and been around to different cities, but for the most part, that's Vancouver has been home.
Yes. And I think, in terms of the news right now with immigrants, this whole country is made up of immigrants. We
Absolutely.
all came from somewhere other than here.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yes, indeed. Wow. And you're an athlete. Let's talk
I
a little bit about that.
No, for sure. I mean, it's one of those things where, growing up, my dad actually watched a lot of kung fu movies, right? It's all like all these Asian kids, right? And so we were definitely part of that, that trope. And for him, it was very important that his son. So I'm the youngest of three sons, and it was very important for him that we were focused academically, that we were good at school, that we studied well, But also we had extracurriculars, and in our extracurricular choice that he put us in was in martial arts. So I studied Taekwondo for a very long time. I was put in when I was about 5 or 6, and I first started with just learning the sport, but eventually started to compete, and I was teaching for a while. And at the peak of my career, I was representing Team Canada on multiple occasions for different Olympic sparring events and representing Team Canada for open tournaments. But it was a very eye-opening experience and a very pivotal part of running a business today.
Yeah. Yes, you need all of that.
Of
The
course.
more rounded you are, I think it helps with your creativity.
Absolutely. And I think for the athlete aspect of it, I think the way that I almost think about business now is I think about business as, um, without the physical demands, but it definitely resonates from the emotional demands of how do you handle stress? How do you perform under pressure? How do
Mhm.
you, surpass whatever limitations that was either, perceived or actually imposed on you? And I think a lot of the lessons and journeys that I grew up with as an athlete carried over into business in that way, so that even though if I'm retired today, a lot of that really still holds true and it resonates. And I think that's also why on a certain level you see that a lot of athletes that transition from being in professional sports do fairly well when it comes to business.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. So let's talk a little bit about two-time growth agency. So tell us exactly how you support businesses and ad creation.
Oh, absolutely. So, we're a performance marketing agency, and what it really means is that we think a lot about how do we communicate on our client's behalf, so that when somebody's introduced to a company or product or service for the first time, how did it go from 0 to 60, from not knowing anything about the business and company, all the way to wanting interest in and transacting with them. And so, as you mentioned earlier, we primarily work with DTC e-commerce brands and also some software companies, and we run a lot of it is Google ads and meta ads. And so if you think of like ads you see on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, we do a lot of the ad creative development and production for that, as well as the destination. So we think of marketing as the right message to the right audience at the right time. And so we think a lot about how do we develop an interesting story, and how do we develop an interesting message, and sending them to the right destinations at a cost that is sustainable for the companies that we work with.
Yes, and that's very critical. And, I've done Facebook ads and things like that. And and what I found for me is that I got a lot of people opening, but I didn't get any customers out of it.
Mm.
So I'm sure I did something wrong.
It's okay. It
Yeah,
happens.
you gotta learn, you gotta just jump in sometimes and learn. So, what is the biggest mistake, let's put it that way, that people like myself make when they run their Facebook ads?
Sure. I think the any marketing really actually is that most people, I would say, run into an issue that they're not clear, concise, or compelling about the core message that they offer. And so, one way to really think about this is if you go into a networking event and you meet somebody face to face, and you're trying to explain to them what product or service that you're offering, most people that you talk to probably won't be a good customer for you, anyways. But in the odd chance that you meet somebody that is a good customer, what kind of messaging and what kind of delivery would you have around what is it that you do? Why is it that you do your product or service really well? And why should someone like the prospect that you're talking to work with you? And so marketing fundamentally is sales at scale, right? There's different types of marketing. There's brand marketing, what happens you or what have you. But for early stage companies, small businesses, where every dollar in advertising matters, you want to do what's called direct response marketing, where somebody sees an ad, and for every dollar of ad that you spend, you want to get $3 or $5 or $10 in advertising returns from that dollar cost. And a lot of it comes down to what kind of messaging are you conveying. And so, in the context of, again, that one-on-one conversation, when they translate that in an ad, a lot of it gets lost in translation. And this is also true not just from a ad creative or video ad or image ad perspective. It's also true on your marketing site too, where people would put up a website, and do people look at it and understand what is it that you do? Generally speaking, they'll talk to you in person and they'll have a solid understanding, largely
Mhm.
because you have a dialogue. But online, you don't have the luxury of being able to clarify or ask follow-up questions or what have you. And so distilling that type of messaging and making sure that you have something that's clear in person and translating it online is something that a lot of business owners overlook because they don't realize that's what the job effectively comes down to.
Okay, so that's what you help business owners do.
Fundamentally, yes.
Yes, yes. Okay. So anything about designing, programming, and marketing your business, and you covered quite a bit, how to language it, that kind of thing. And like let's talk about Facebook, for example. When you setting up those ads, they normally ask you what demographic you want to focus on. And I find that it doesn't cover enough, because it's not just the demographic. You want, like, for example, I might want podcasters who are interested in moving into television.
Right.
So, but that's not listed.
Right.
So how would you set up your ad when what you're looking for isn't there?
That's an excellent question. So normally what you do is this, it helps to understand how Facebook and the platform works. And so for yourself, are you an active Instagram or social media user? Right.
Yes.
And so you'll notice that over time that when you go to your product, sorry, your Instagram feed or your Facebook feed, Facebook and Meta is very good at tailoring information that is interesting and relevant for you. Because here's what's going to happen. If you see a post that you're likely to engage in, you'll slow down and you'll watch, you'll click a like, you'll leave a comment, you'll actively engage in it. And that's both true for image, content or also
Mm.
for video content. And over time, it adjusts. Over time, you'll get a sense of, oh, you like, ads about cats, or you like products that are interested in, and maybe you own a dog or something like that, where you'll pay attention to certain types of content, and that teaches the system over time what kind of behavior that you exhibit that resonates with certain type of messaging. And so because of that, the implied way of targeting is going through their different settings. I want to target all the different people from 25 to 45 in these particular areas with these type of interests. That's what the implied settings are. But in practice, what you're really doing is you're not actually utilizing those settings as a way of targeting. What you really want to do is you want to do targeting in your content. As in, if you produce an image ad that says, run a podcast, here's what you need to know about blah. And what happens is all the people that are running and paying attention to podcast content, maybe it's educational pieces or what have you, they'll stop and pay attention. And for all those that don't, what are they going to do? They're going to be like, nope, not interested. That's not relevant for me. And they're going to scroll on. And so over time, what you'll find is all the people that resonate with that messaging and audience would eventually show up, and you see the system improve over time. And so that's kind of a very broad way of saying how targeting effectively works. But effectively, you're trying to target people and have them self-select through your ad creative production. And so that's why understanding your demographic and the pain points that people have is important, because you want to say certain things that resonate with them. If you talk about a problem or an education piece that is not interesting to them, they're just going to move on to something else.
Wow. That was explained very well, John. Thank you. So if people want to work with you, I'll say businesses, how do they connect with you?
They find us online. So our website is 2x.agency. So if you look at our 2x growth agency, you'll generally find us. Or you can also find me on socials. I'm sure you'll be in show notes, but if you look for JTC Chan, I'm sure there's a lot of John Chans out there, but if you look for John Chan in Canada and Vancouver, you'll find me.
Oh, okay. Are you on LinkedIn?
I am.
Yes. Okay. Good, good, good. SaaS businesses and e-com businesses.
That's
First
right.
of all, let's define a SaaS business so that way people know exactly what that is.
Of course. So SaaS stands for software as a service. And so anytime you log into a website to, pay a subscription for something, almost like you're renting a particular software or service, that's what SaaS businesses generally are. And so sometimes you create a login and you don't pay for the product. So let's say, for example, LinkedIn would be a service that you don't pay for. But those type of businesses and those type of websites are generally the type of companies that we work with. And it can range from anything from marketing software and services to travel booking sites or what have you. But anytime you log into something to do some sort of transaction, that's a software as a service.
Okay. Okay. So you deal with a lot of software companies, in other
We
words.
do.
Okay. Okay. Wow. And let's say, what does that look like? What's the initial, a company comes to you? What is your process?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times when you think about, our role as a marketer, I have a certain domain expertise, which is understanding distribution, understanding how to use the microphone to broadcast a particular message. But what I don't have domain expertise is in your business. If you're in PR or if you sell, to newlyweds or what have you, I wouldn't have the nuanced understanding of the particular demographic that you cater to. And so generally what I'm looking for initial signs of traction that people have already transacted with you, because it de-risks the idea of me coming in to run marketing ads for you, because I have a base understanding that whatever you're doing has some level of desire or need that people inherently want your product or service. And usually it comes down to figuring out, once you have a sense of the core audience and customers, and you're doing a lot of, a decent amount of sales, the next question comes down to, how do we find more of those people? Is it through Google search because people are looking up your product? Or is it something that people would casually think about because there's no key or clear terminology that they would look for, that if they're doom scrolling on their phones, that it would be a good time to distract them and talk about this thing that they might be interested in, so that they end up learning about your product or service. And so thinking through the way that people enter and what is the right level of awareness that people have about your product or service is a matter of figuring out the different aspects of how we allocate a particular campaign. But it all starts with understanding that there is an inherent want and need, and that's where it starts, which then leads to all the other aspects of what makes a successful campaign. Understanding the unit economics, what we call, which is what is the cost of goods sold and what is the target customer acquisition cost, so that if we are able to find customers at a particular dollar amount, that we know it'll be profitable for you. We'll try to figure out the breakdowns of these type of metrics, both on the qualitative side and on the quantitative side. And then that would give us a reasonable level of confidence that if we were to engage with the business, that we could do something, especially if they have ran historical marketing campaigns before, that gives us a starting point for understanding what seems to have worked and what seems to be areas that we need to run experiments or improve upon.
Okay. Now, let's say they're a brand new business. They don't have a history.
Hmm.
So now, what does that scenario look like?
Generally, we would try to stay away from it, only because it's riskier for a company to take us on. But we definitely had the scenarios before too. And it'll be going back to what I kind of shared earlier.
Mhm.
Some products actually aren't inherently new. So for example, if you sell, marketing agency services, it's a tried and true business model that people fundamentally have hired before. It's less risky, right? And so then it's a matter of figuring out who else needs a product or service and how do you refine the messaging for you specifically. So in those cases, it's less risky. But let's say you're selling a software. Software is a little bit trickier, because software is a scenario where we don't know if people want your product or service. And so when you run a campaign, it's hard to tell, is it the product that's not working? Is it the messaging? Is it the campaign that is configured incorrectly? There's more variables to understand where is it that you need to address.
Mhm.
And so because of that, the usually what we would advise is making sure that people are able to prospect. And again, going back to getting sales offline, is making sure that you're able to talk to people one-on-one. And you'll see a lot of marketing type of work look more like sales type of work, where you're just basically doing research and customer discovery of, if I have this product or service and do you have this problem or need, it's we should definitely work together, and here are my reasons why. And if you have that kind of conversations organically, that starts building the sound bites or the areas that you want to develop your messaging for, because you have a sense of how people give you real-time feedback of what resonates versus what's not. If someone's not willing to fork out and bring out the credit card in a conversation, even if it's a series of calls, that's surely a broader sign that there's maybe something more that might be amiss, that's more fundamental to the product or service, and it's not a marketing problem. It's kind of like a business problem that you need to sort of figure out first. So it's not a one size fits all answer, but a lot of times really comes down to understanding, again, marketing is sales at scale. And so if you could figure out, how to sell the first customer, then we can figure out how to figure out the next 10, and so on and so forth.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Wow. This has been very, very, I got lots of nuggets, John.
I'm glad.
So I know that my audience will as well. So, what is your the guide to having a great ad creative? I mean, you kind of covered most of it, but let's just summarize uh,
Yeah.
what that looks like.
I would say starting with basics. There's no one size fits all answer, and different companies and products have different needs, right? If you look at, what is it that we produce, I think it's easy to talk about that and get into techniques and what have you. But I think the common denominator, whether if it's a design problem or a landing page problem or an ad creative problem, is that we're dealing with people. And people, when they're on their phones or people when they're searching things online, is that they're looking for information to solve a problem or they're looking to be entertained. And so, I talked about, being clear, concise, and compelling, and that's kind of the baseline. But sometimes it's actually not doing that. Sometimes it's about intentionally being vague to raise curiosity. Sometimes it's to, you know, crack a joke and be entertaining so people pay attention to you. There's a lot of different ways that great marketing can be done, and we haven't certainly figured it all out. But if I look at a company, for working with them for the first time, most companies, if they don't have a sustainable advertising model in place, is largely because they don't have a refined, clear messaging in place. And so, an ad creative, the basic structure of it or a standard set would be broken into three parts, right? And so, let's say we talk about a video ad, not talking about a Google ad, but let's say a video ad. If you have a 15-second clip, the first 3 seconds is what we call the thumb stopper. So that if you're scrolling through the feed, that if you see something, that's the part where they stop to pay attention to you. And if you go spend time on TikTok or if you spend time on any type of organic content where you have influencers and creators, you'll see that they're actually very good at that. And so being intentional about the first 3 seconds is really important. And then the next 10 to 15 seconds, or in some cases 20 seconds, is basically the problem solution that you're trying to address or the educational content that you have. And so you're just walking through, what kind of situations people have, how you might solve them, and perhaps you might include some accolades and social proof of other people have responded with so that you can help them de-risk the idea of transacting with you. But by the time you get to the end of it, you should be having enough interest, if not an actual desire, to engage with the product service, and at which point they can click on the link to learn more about the product service, at which point the landing page takes over. But you're basically guiding through the psychology of someone that is bored. How do you start to get their attention? And once you got their attention, how do you communicate in a way that builds enough interest so that you can generate a click to your site? That's where it all starts. And afterwards, it's the rest of it. How do you do it in a cost-effective way? How do you do it? Make sure that there's no checkout issues, or how do you do it in a way that is clear what people are getting, and all kinds of good stuff.
Yes, yes. So, I mean, marketing has a lot of moving parts. Building ads, it has a lot of moving parts. And a lot of times as business owners, we just got to go through it and learn. It's a learning process. The
Absolutely,
whole process is pretty much learning because what you think might be the pain point may not be the pain point, and
absolutely.
you won't find out until you begin to explore.
Absolutely, which is why I go back to, again, marketing is sales at scale. If you think about what is, the fundamental aspect of do you have a business or not, is are you able to find customers or not? Can you get yourself a first client? And why or why not? And just walking through sort of the small barriers to progress to how
Mm.
do you figure out how to walk somebody from beginning to the end. That basically is the building block. And once you're able to do that on a micro level, then you can start thinking about that and layer on the additional problems. How do you do this in an ad platform? How do you do this on a website? How do you do this in an interesting ad creative? All those things are built upon that core foundation that people fundamentally want your product or service, and you have a good enough an idea of why people would transact with you. And if you can walk that through, the rest becomes a lot easier. Although again, there's no silver bullets.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, you got me. I'm gonna be simmering on a lot of this today, John, because this has been very, very educational. And I know my viewers and listeners are going to really take some good nuggets away because I think in most businesses, that's the biggest struggle, the
Of course,
marketing aspect. Because I mean, they're not, they love the product because it's their product. But
of
how
course.
do you convince other people to love and want the product?
Absolutely. And again, this is also why you're absolutely right, because it's an imperative and interesting problem to solve, but it's also the one that basically defines, once you are able to have your first customer, how do you find the next one? And a lot of, marketing isn't everything. There's a lot more to the business about, what makes a successful business, but having a strong and proper distribution and having a repeatable one definitely separates, a very successful one from one that is just starting out and just making it. And if you look at some of the biggest companies in the world, all of them have their sales and marketing dialed down, and for good reason. And so again, we're just, one small company trying to figure it out just like the rest of us. But I think the way that we think about it is that we try to go back to fundamentals, so that if we can map the core fundamentals to business, then we can then make more sense out of the new tools that are coming out, or the layers of different aspect of things, because those things may change, but fundamentally, business is about people to people, and making great deals for everybody and making sure that everyone's happy on both sides.
Yes, so start with the basics.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about AI, because we
Sure.
know AI is now in everything.
Of course.
So how do you utilize AI
I
in
mean,
your ad creatives?
no, I'm very glad you asked it, because it's one, it's top of mind, and we're seeing that change the industry both for better and for worse, right? But I'll talk about the most of the main benefits first. If you think about the agency business, the agency, yes, we have strategy, we have consulting, we have different experiences, but fundamentally the agency business is a operations business. People hire us to do repeatable tasks because we have experience around multiple different things. And so I think one of the things that when with the advent of ChatGPT or the advent of different sort of AI tools, it definitely has increased the output and capacity for the rest of the team, where things that we used to do by hand are now AI assisted. And I don't think AI is at the current point where it's better at doing some of the jobs that it does for us, but it definitely is more attentive and can be more comprehensive. It can do things at a much faster rate. So from a video and ad creative perspective, it can't help us understand a core business, but it can help us brainstorm and do research and think of different ways that can assist us in thinking about what might be interesting as an ad creative. If you look at a lot of with advertising nowadays, what we call media buying is largely a machine learning and AI assisted process. So when we set up the account in a certain way, a lot of the machine learning takes over. And again, it's for better and for worse, because on one hand, it removes a lot of the manual labor and friction that comes with account management, but it might also not make the most optimal decisions on your behalf. Where sometimes as a media buyer, your now job is to make sure that it doesn't lead astray, or that your job is to set things up so that you're most likely to succeed, so to speak. And then the other aspect of it is that where we're about to head to, as we think about last year, we spend a lot of time incorporating and developing different ways to use AI as part of a workflow. So, for example, we do a lot of scripting or copywriting, and for the initial drafts, but a lot of it afterwards, or even for grammar checking. But a lot of it now is really ingrained into our workflows. Where we see AI will be impactful to our business is you might hear different companies and brands talk about AI agents, or the concept of AI agents, which is basically automation with the capabilities of reasoning and processing. So if you could do reasoning connected with some of the tools that we have with spreadsheets or Google Docs or that type of thing, we almost have I want to say like an AI employee of sorts that can take over some of the menial tasks that we used to do repeatedly, but on a automated basis and on schedule, that allows us to do our work much more efficiently, and in a higher capacity and a higher production and a higher quality. So we're very excited for that, and we're actively working on those domains.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I'm working on. All the mundane tasks that I do that have to be done, that takes up time.
Absolutely.
You
Right.
know, I'm like, how can I get AI to do this, this, and this?
I mean, it's absolutely as you should. I mean, I think AI right now is equivalent to the internet in the 2000s. The internet was around before, but
Yeah,
there was a tipping point where you see rapid growth and you see a lot of industries and businesses transform. And so, even like Zoom calls or meetings that right now, a lot of it right now have AI note takers in all of our calls so that we can get
Yes.
transcriptions, so we can get action items that can be sent to our project manager so that we can then distribute it to the rest of the team. We're
Yeah.
much more organized because of little improvements like that across our organization.
Yes, and as a result of, the different tools that have been added, I'm able to now start a blog with the interviews that people that like to read.
Hmm.
There's, you have to like go where people are because everybody's not on social media.
Hmm.
There's some people that don't even watch TV at all. Some people like to read,
Right.
so now with um, the tools that are available in a lot of the recording platforms, I'm able to pull that information without having to pay another service to
That's right.
transcribe the entire interview.
That's right. Or even enhance the experience because you now have proper captions for
Yes,
being able to follow the conversation in a way that
yes,
was, much more efficiently than went before. Right. So
yes. And one of the things I've already thought about was creating a book
that's
based
right.
off the transcripts from all the interviews.
Excellent idea. Right. And that's as well you should. You have so much content that is nuggets that are hidden. What's the best
Yes,
way to summarize and put that together and to collaborate on that is using the technologies that are available to us with the information and data that you've gathered. So I think that's an excellent
yes.
idea.
Yes, and my background is IT. I was in IT. I've been in IT for, God, I know 40 years. I started when
Wow.
it was the big mainframe
Hmm,
kind of thing and key punch and all that kind of good stuff. So I've kind of evolved with the industry.
that's
And
amazing.
what I love about the industry is constantly changing. There's never a dull moment. Never, ever.
Absolutely, which makes it really exciting and also and sometimes a little daunting at the same time.
Yes.
But I'm sure you can really appreciate that because again, as you see how rapid the tools and technology evolved, so has human productivity and all the different capabilities that it's opened up, which is why it's a wonderful thing.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I'm like, when something new come out, I'm like, oh, okay, let me just dig into this and see what this about. So yeah, it's fun. But John, it has been amazing to talk with you. You are very easy to talk to, very clear in your answers. So I appreciate all of that. And I know our audience will as well. So again, how do people connect with you and your company?
For sure. Our website is 2x.agency, and you can always find me on socials. I'm John Chan. You'll find me on Twitter or X now, I guess. You'll find me on LinkedIn, but just if you go to our site and just do a proper reach out, I'd be more than happy to talk to you.
Absolutely. So thank you again. And thank you, audience, as always, because this is never possible without you as well.
Likewise, Ida, thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.